Red Ray Gun Limited presents
The Benji and Nick Show. Hello.
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 Whew.
It's hot in here today, isn't it?
Okay, oh, it's sort of hot and cold. Anyway, good morning.
Good day.
Good afternoon.
Good evening.
Goodness.
Loch Ness. It just shows the theory. You know, the theory of who starts it gets the nest. Clearly, not actually in action this week. Crazy.
No, right. Anyway, hello. This is the Benji and Nick Show.
Yes, good. Well, no, we've already done that bit. Yes, hello.
I'm just going to say good-o.
I was going to go, good evening. The Benji and Nick Show. So if you don't know what it is, I'm going to tell you what it is. It is the home of cult television sounds and reviews and all sorts. We review old telly, we chat about it, we talk about lots of different things. We usually get in a fluster about something, and we just chat about our favourite telly, really.
A fluster?
A flustery dustery.
I tell you what, I'm in a fluster about. You know, the sun's come out a bit, and then everyone.
He's a vampire, so when the sun comes out, he.
Everyone near me has started sort of sawing. Can you hear this noise? I mean, right, that's been going constantly for hours now. I don't know what they're doing. I hope they're just cutting their limbs off. Because if they don't, I will.
A Massacre by Mr. Nicholas Briggs.
Yes, I'm in a fluster about nothing in particular.
Well, it happens.
If I will record in a shed in a garden, that's my fault, isn't it?
Well, it's one of the drawbacks, I suppose, of recording in a shed in the garden. But you know, these people should know about that. You should erect a massive flag with a big microphone on it so that they know. I've got a glowing red sign outside my studio now that says "on air," so that I let the entire world know that I'm talking.
People just think you've got an oxygen mask on, probably. I'm on air.
Gas and air. Woo!
Oh yes, that's great. Anyway, sorry. That's when I've had various surgical procedures. I've been on gas and air. But that's enough of my medical history. So we talk about cult television, and last week we selected An Englishman's Castle to talk about, which we waxed lyrical about it when we mentioned it, didn't we? We
really did, yeah.
There's nothing left to say, really. I don't know what this podcast is going to be about.
Well, we can talk about it. That's one of those things. It was Nick suggested it to me. He brought the DVD to me one day, and he said, "I think you should watch this. I think you'd enjoy it." And so I watched it. Anticipated doing what I normally do, which is I just heard a massive clash of things outside.
Titans.
Clash of Titans. But I was going to do what I normally do, which is watch an episode a day. I try and watch telly in the morning. That's my ritual, and it's catching on. My friend Tom messaged me and saying, "Oh, because I told him to watch The Tripods again because he loves it. He loved it the first time, but he said, "Oh, I've been doing the morning ritual and it's caught on." He said, he said, "I've watched all of The Tripods. I'm now watching. I think he's watching The Sweeney." And that's his thing. I love it. You have breakfast, a cup of tea, and you just watch telly. But with An Englishman's Castle, I put on the first episode and just loved it so much I binged it. And then I was meeting up with Nick the next day anyway, so I watched it all on the train. And as soon as I got there, we sat down in a cafe, Leon, I think, and just talked about it. And that was all we did. The second you sat down, wasn't it? It was like, right, An Englishman's Castle, let's go. So,
well, what is it? To explain for those who don't know what it is, obviously it's a television programme.
It is. It's a television programme. It's one of those ones where there are pictures that move with a soundtrack with it.
It's amazing how they do that.
It's science, Nick. It's crazy.
What it is? Of science.
An Englishman's Castle is a sort of what-if alternative future where an
alternative past, really.
Well, I suppose it is now. Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah. Well, no, definitely.
It was made in 1978, wasn't it?
Made in 1978, starring Kenneth More, about if the Germans had actually won the war and if we were occupied by the Germans. It focuses around Kenneth More playing a writer who is writing and producing a soap opera called An Englishman's Castle, all about the Second World War.
Or the end of it, yeah. That's
the
right.
end of it. And
it's kind of a propaganda piece he's really writing, isn't he? He's trying to be as honest about it as possible. He was someone who fought in the resistance, but then the Germans offered an amnesty, and it was like an honourable surrender by the British against the invasion. And the interesting thing about this is because this is a story that has been told in different ways since, actually. I think the major works about this, like The Man in the High Castle, which I've never seen, and there's a book by Robert Fatherland, it's called. Do you know? Do you know the book Fatherland?
Yes, I know the book. It's got my recollection of Fatherland is it's got red pages. Like the outside of the book that I saw at the airport, it's got like a red. It's the whole big red book.
I don't think mine did, but I don't know. There was a very disappointing TV movie adaptation of it, starring Rutger Hauer. But that's a story of an SS officer, I think in the 1960s or something, after Germany has conquered Europe. But anyway, what I'm saying is that the major works about this sort of theme were done after this series, I believe. So this was really like the first one. I'm sure there'll be masses of emails sent in to tell me if I'm wrong. But this is by Philip Mackey, who wrote the Naked Civil Servant, who, funnily enough, whose name I only heard. I never knew who wrote The Naked Civil Servant, which is about Quentin Crisp, and of course famously played by John Hurt. And it's when John Hurt was telling me about The Naked Civil Servant, he said, and Phil Mackey was chatting to me in the Coach and Horses. You know old Phil, don't you? And I thought, well, of course I don't, but he's so generous to sort of assume that I knew this terribly famous, accomplished writer. And he wrote this, and the BBC put it on without any real fuss. It was just 3 episodes in 1978 on BBC Two, which was their sort of minority interest channel back in those days. And there was no huge fuss about it, and what's more, no one remembers it really. And when we started doing these podcasts, Benji, old chap, I remember Googling it and thinking, we must do that. I could find no reference to it anywhere, no clips on YouTube, certainly no DVD release or record of a VHS release. I thought, my goodness, I almost felt like I'd imagined it. And then just recently, there was a clip because it was to advertise the DVD release by Simply Media. So that's simply fantastic.
And it's I think as well, certainly watching it, it really does deserve, as we have said, and which is one reason where we sort of agreed that we should definitely cover this, is that it deserves so much more than it gets, more coverage, because it's a fantastic piece of work. It's a captivating piece of work. I think it's an acquired taste in the sense that if you're expecting lots of action and guns and all sorts of chaos, this is a lot more of a drama piece. But it's what they don't do with action scenes, they do with words, and it's so captivating, and everybody in it you're fascinated by. Every single character I found fascinating in their own way.
Yes, the power of it is that it's not action-packed, because it seems to be just a very normal England which people at the time in 1978 would have just recognised as the present day. There are no huge swastika flags adorning buildings. There are no, you know what I mean? There's no
nice
iconography of, it just looks like Britain, and that's the idea. The Germans are running it by proxy. There's a British government, a puppet government, and although in the offing it is mentioned that in the offing the Germans are going to take more direct control because the resistance is gaining in power. And this is the irresistible thing about it. It's the story really of this writer played by Kenneth More. I can't remember the name of the character now. What's the name of the character?
Wasn't Peter Ingram?
Peter Ingram. It's a very credible name as a sort of BBC writer. I don't think they say it's the actual BBC, do they?
I don't think so. I think it's obviously implied. I mean, it's filmed, isn't it? It looks almost like they filmed it at the BBC bar.
I think they did. And they certainly, the exterior of the television station is BBC Television Centre. It's basically the state broadcasting system as sort of run by the Nazis, with a very soft hand in glove approach to it.
And I think that's what's so fascinating, is that because it's so subtle, because everything is so subtle, you find yourself not really knowing who to trust. You don't have the big evil chap who's, you know, the big evil producer or head of programming, you know, with 2 guards either side of him in a big palace. It just feels like a normal office, and that's what's so straight. You know, you're sitting there thinking, is this guy a good guy or a bad guy? Should I support him? Should I not?
Well, as you say, the thing about not being able to trust is key, because this is the story about Peter Ingram's being contacted by a member of the resistance, which he doesn't realise to start with, does he? Because he is clearly I mean, it's, you know, 1970s morality, and it's kind of expected that a man of his age, he's ancient, he's 57, my age. Kenneth More was actually 64 at the time, but anyway, and he's trying his luck with one of the young actresses in the cast, isn't he? And he's, you know, and she must be in her 20s. Fantastic performance by Isla Blair. Yeah, she's brilliant. Actually, I think I've worked with her. I think she did a Big Finish ages ago. I'm going to check that now. I think it was called Exotron.
Oh, she was, how weird is that? Just off the record here. She's Jamie Glover's mum.
Oh, I know that, yeah. She's Julian Glover's wife.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah.
Oh, she didn't do Exotron. Maybe it was the previous one.
Well, she definitely works in that. She says, yeah, Blair's narrated many audiobooks, so...
Yes, Isla Blair in Exotron, yeah. She played a character called Paula. So there you are. I have met her and have worked with her, but because she was that was back in 2007. Of course, she was a much younger woman. Rather glamorous. She's rather glamorous when I met her, actually. And it's a story of their relationship. It's a story of the relationship between Peter Ingrams and his wife and his 2 sons. His sons are very different, with different political leanings.
One of them played by Nigel Havers, a very young Nigel Havers as well.
Young. Yeah, just starting out, really.
I'd love to pick his brains on this one, actually.
Yeah. Oh, he would be full of stories about it. He's a great raconteur, Nigel. He just started out in a thing he did for Southern Television called Black Arrow. Do you know
Black Arrow? No. Sounds good, though.
It was typical Southern Television, poor production standards, rubbish. It had a sort of drum beat theme. Something like that.
It's medieval. I'm going to have to watch it now.
Yeah.
Going to have to, I'm afraid.
I think they did 2 series of it, didn't they? Black Arrow.
It ran from 72 to 75, according to the internet.
And is Nigel Havers in it?
Yeah, absolutely. Right, yeah. He looks about 5 years old. He looks older than that. He looks at least 12.
Yeah, he does look very young in it, doesn't he?
Yeah, very young.
It's all available on DVD, is it?
Yeah, I say
that. Who released it?
That's exactly what I'm about to find out. It doesn't actually really... I can only find it on Amazon for buy it second hand for 20 quid. Probably come on a VHS. That's crazy. Yeah, I don't know who distributes that, but yeah, we'll have to look at that.
Yes, and the mention of Nigel Havers reminds me that there are a few what they call, you know, the term is volte-face, where suddenly the plot turns in a different direction. There are a few big shocks in the storyline. Don't want to give them away, really. So I mean, it isn't, I suppose it is a thriller in a way, but it's more about the ideas and the personal relationships, but it is quite enthralling and catches you by surprise and moves very fast. It starts very, very slow, and then it's almost like it was designed as 4 parts, and then they lost the 4th episode and they've put it all into part 3. I mean, I couldn't believe when I started watching part 3 that it was going to end in 45 minutes time, but the plot really picks up a pace, and those people who you thought were bad maybe aren't, and those people you thought were good maybe aren't, and it's just and a very affecting ending, an amazing final shot, not because it's like a Spielberg shot or anything, but just what it implies and what it means.
It's amazing, I think, when you look at how it starts to how it finishes. I think that is, for me, when you look back on it after watching it, which I hope you guys do, because that'd be brilliant. The whole thing is a different animal by the end of it. It's quite shocking. But yeah, I mean, the end absolutely blew my mind, and all the cliffhangers actually. I think the one that affected me the most was the first cliffhanger of the first, the first big clang. We can't say about it really, can we? But
or should we?
or should we?
Put your fingers in your ears.
But yeah, or shall we? No,
there's a spoiler coming up. Go on.
Okay. Well, the bit that really affected me was when he goes to sleep with his young actress that he meets, Jill, who plays Sally in the play, and there's this whole thing of she turns around and she says, I've got a secret, I've got something I need to tell you, and he's thinking, oh, whatever, I'm not going to sleep with you, sort of thing, and then she said, well, I'm Jewish, and if you sleep with me and they find out, there's a high chance it's going to be, you're going to end up brown bread. But the shock, because I didn't see it coming at all, I really didn't think about it, and then it drops like a ton of bricks, and I think, wow, that now we know what's going on. And you spend quite a lot of the following bits of the episode questioning her motives. You question whether she does love him, or whether it's all a ploy to get him involved in this resistance movement because of who he is and the power in which he's got over the general public. And that's the best thing. It leaves you guessing. It leaves you thinking. You're working it out. You're working out everybody's motives. And I think it's a top-class drama, really.
I think one of the fascinating aspects of it, particularly now, although it was fascinating back in the day, and I did watch it at the time, is how they represent television production. It's a very sort of accurate, dramatized documentary about how they made TV drama in those days. The fact that it was rehearsed in a rehearsal room with just fake walls and posts and things to delineate the doors, and just odd bits of furniture, just all mapped out like a theatre rehearsal room with markings on the floor. And they'd go through and rehearse it, for a week, and the director would be in there, giving them little hints and saying, oh, maybe just wait there, and that line's not working, let's change that. And then, of course, they record it more or less in one go, in an evening in the studio, and each episode begins with an episode of An Englishman's Castle, the name of the soap opera, being produced, and as the credits come up, you hear, Go Grams and Super One and Cut To and all that kind of stuff going on. It's quite a trip down memory lane, and it would have fascinated me. Well, I know it fascinated me at the time, because that's exactly how Doctor Who was made as well.
But also the type of thing as well that certainly at that time, you didn't get a great insight into how things went on behind the scenes. It's not like now, where everything has a behind the scenes featurette of some kind. Anything that's worth watching at some point has something, whether it's online or an extra on demand content or DVD extra. But back then, to have this and see how not just that program's being made, but presumably how the other programs that you love are being made, was probably quite a novelty, and something that would, it pulls you in straight away. You're intrigued from the word go with this, because it starts as almost a different program to the one that you end up watching. So if you flicked on, in the olden days when you've got 3 or 4 channels, flick onto it in the middle of those opening scenes, you just assume it was a historical drama. And it's you can imagine the person who clicked in late, can't you? Think, oh, this is quite good actually. I'm getting quite into this. I've been waiting for something. Well, it's a drama within a drama.
Yeah. one of the interesting things they do with that, because often when dramas are within a drama, especially in older television productions, they represent the drama that's within it being a bit sort of, the acting's not very good, and you know what I mean. Whereas this, they do it really well, don't they?
It actually feels exactly, in a way, it's brilliant in this. It's very BBC the way they've acted it, not in an over the top way, but certainly of that time. With the wonderful sort of RP sort of stuff going on and the BBC English, the acting of that time.
Yes,
which
definitely.
actually then moves on to have Kenneth More playing it really straight and subtly in some respects, and so you actually don't. It feels like it isn't a TV drama, but it's not patronising when they're doing the drama. Do you know what I mean?
And that's exactly what I'm saying.
Gritty realism.
It feels like that series that's currently being shown on Talking Pictures TV called A Family at War. It's very much like this is like that, really. It's the story of the war, and as we join it, it's towards the end of the war, so it's getting to the really tricky bit because he's having to deal with the Germans winning and trying to portray that in a positive way for the current regime's benefit, but and there's a whole thing where he wants to have a Jewish character in it, and they're advising him not to, and he's saying, well, this is partly autobiographical. The interesting thing also about the character Peter Ingram's, he feels he's writing something quite worthwhile, but a lot of people feel that what he's writing is trash, and it's interesting that he's never really confronted with that, so you end up feeling quite sorry for him because he doesn't know that the controller of the television station thinks what he's doing is trash. But another thing,
he ticks boxes, doesn't he?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Another thing, spoiler alert, is that the TV controller, who seems, it's a fantastic performance by an actor who was in many things at that time. He seems to be a bad guy, but actually it turns out, there's a complete undermining of your expectations there. Although, I mean, he's never really a good guy, but it just, you just feel this whole world of Nazi-occupied or controlled Britain is just a lethal place where you could put a foot wrong without knowing it. I was also fascinated by the idea of the whole... Benji, I'm getting a huge sense of deja vu. We just talked about this before, have we? Or did we discuss it in another podcast in the what we've been watching thing?
No, I don't think. Mate, I think it's from when we sat down and watched talked about it in the cafe.
I feel like we've said all this before.
I don't think we have. I honestly don't think we have.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry if we have. That whole business of the resistance being that you only knew one other member of the resistance, and that's how it survived. You just know the person who two people. The person who recruits you and the person you recruit, and that's it. So if you're caught and interrogated and they torture you, you can only shop two people, and so the resistance movement is very insulated against attack from the regime. That's rather good. Also, that reminds me of the way they talk about torture and death in interrogation is really quite blasé, and it's like when his son, we should mention that the Nigel Hagers, I don't know who that is, the Nigel Havers' son is he's arrested for potential terrorist acts, and you find out later that he's been dobbed in by his brother, who's a good Nazi and wants to get on. But the idea is when he's carted off that his father has to face the fact that if he can't pull any strings, the guy is just going to be killed.
He'll be rubbed
if you
out,
go into that interrogation room, you're probably not going to get out alive. Interrogation meant torture and execution, basically.
Very real, reality in the Second World War as well, and certainly.
Well, exactly.
Especially with this, but again, it's those subtle elements that make it almost a more believable thing. I mean, like, do you remember watching SSGB? Now, yes. I never got to the end of that because they nailed it with the world. It looked lovely seeing all the all that sort of vision of a post. I say lovely, but it was interesting to see the vision of a post Second World War.
It was executed well. Oh, that sounds in bad taste as well.
But I think almost what is more intriguing about this is the subtlety in everything, including elements like that, because it just feels more believable. It feels like you're not in this sort of pantomime version of the future with goose stepping.
No, that's the power of it, I think. Yeah, absolutely amazing. I'd just like to slightly lighten the mood by going back when you did sort of Peter Ingram's internal monologue. You represented it by sort of, I want to sleep with you. Just made me laugh. But it is that 1970s aspect of it is quite sordid, isn't it? Where the older, powerful man just assumes he can, to use an old phrase, get his leg over whenever he wants. So that's
it's been wasn't it insinuated by his wife that it wasn't the first one?
That's as I mentioned before, he's clearly, that's what professional men of that age did. Just couldn't keep it in their trousers, which is another phrase one likes to use. Just thought, well, because his son says, he says he's going for a meal with so and so, and she says, who is it he's really having a meal with? She already knows that he's straying from the path. How do we feel about Kenneth More? I think possibly playing the most unsympathetic character he's ever played. I mean, he is a sympathetic character, but you know what I mean? He's not pure as the driven snow. He's
a funny match for this, in a way. I'm unsure about it in some respects, but I like how understated he does play the whole thing in a way. He seems incredibly sort of conflicted by everything, but he also seems incredibly tired throughout it. And whether or not... I don't know. It's a really hard one to gauge for me. I think
Kenneth More died 3 years later, I think, after making this. I think he died when he was 67.
Shocking, isn't it?
Yeah.
Certainly for Kenneth More, it's a complete jump to something different, isn't it? When you see him in these sort of chirpy films that reach for the sky as Douglas Bader, and he's brilliant in that film. It's one of my favourites. I love his performance in that. Just this sort of ever the optimist, slight clown, cocky bloke. And then you flash to this, and it's got this bloke who's, he's tired, and he's thinking, and he's trying to sort all these problems out, and he's work and life, and he's slowly realising the weight of what is going on and the decisions he's got to make. I think he does a good job.
Yes. I mean, he is... this is a very controversial thing to say. You imagine that Jacob Rees-Mogg has got a photograph of him on the wall somewhere. I mean, because he's the archetypal Englishman who will, fight for his country and against adversity kind of thing, which, I'm not that kind of Englishman, but... and I think that is a silly, idealised view that's not of much worth, but I don't want to be too controversial. That said, I cannot help but be seduced by the appeal of it in a fictional context.
Oh, definitely.
He's amazing, and goodness me, in A Night to Remember, the film about the sinking of the Titanic, which was made in 1956 and was considered to be too soon, people found it quite tasteless. Because there were still people living who had relatives who died on the Titanic. Kenneth, by goodness, you need Kenneth More in that movie, and his positivity and his sheer lovability, because it's such a bleak story of human folly and disaster and death. You need Kenneth More there giving his trademark hoo-hoo, which he does manage to get into episode 3 of this when he's talking to his
so true
mistress. Hoo-hoo, he says. Hoo-hoo. You can always tell it's Kenneth More when there's a hoo-hoo. The thought of you in frilly knickers, as he says in A Night to Remember.
He was in Battle of Britain, wasn't he, as well?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the reason I think of Battle of Britain...
He was quite unpleasant in that, wasn't he?
He was. I was about to say, he was, despite the fact that I was going to suggest, before I realised he was in it, because because my first train of thought is when you're getting seduced by the jingoistic nature of these things. The Battle of Britain is a great film, you know, with that wonderful moment. The only time we'll surrender is when you're marching down Whitehall, you know, and that's a film you can get
Ralph
seduced
Richardson
by.
delivers that line, yes.
And you get seduced by that sort of thing. But him in that film, when he's going around Duxford, isn't he, shouting at people and being a particularly what was it? Is it Mr. Warren was his name? Is it? Or not?
I can't remember.
Oh, I can't remember. Is it? Oh, I can't remember. But what's he gets shouted at, doesn't he? I believe. I can't remember. But
yes. I can't remember her name.
Susanna York, is it?
Yeah, by Susanna York. Yes. Don't you yell at me, Mr. Warren, or something she says.
Something like that. Yeah.
And he kind of just stops at his tracks, doesn't he? And
I think that was him. Maybe it isn't. I don't know. He played.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty. I don't know.
I'm
the most ridiculous bit of podcasting.
I'm pretty sure it's him. But it says here that he played Group Captain Barker.
Oh, okay.
So maybe, I don't know. Who knows? But fascinating stuff anyway. Jingoistic.
You hope. Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, the controversial thing, which I really feel I've said before when we mentioned this before, I'm getting so much déjà vu. Déjà mu, whatever that is that he actually, even though he makes a fantastic fist of it in An Englishman's Castle, he is miscast.
Yeah, I think you're correct.
He is the wrong man for the part. You know, you would, I mean, dare I say it, if you made this again, you would cast Paul McGann in the part. Because Paul is very good at that kind of questionable morality look in his eyes. You know what I mean? And also you need someone who is an older man who is, and Paul's a bit older than me, so yeah. You need someone who's an older man who's kind of still got it. And that the ladies go, oh, he's gorgeous, isn't he? You know, and Paul is definitely that kind of guy. Whereas Kenneth Williams, no, An Englishman's Castle, terrible impersonation. Sorry. I'm gonna write An Englishman's Castle. That was pretty much as bad as my impersonation,
terrible,
but in an entirely different way, I would say.
Dreadful.
But Kenneth More, I've lost. What am I talking about? Yeah, Kenneth More in this part is slightly too cuddly, and it's slightly, I don't know, it's a bit icky. I think he's got to be a bit sexier, really.
I think it's
controversial,
but then maybe in a way it works well this way. Because
it does certainly work well.
Because in the sense that he's sleeping with her, and you question whether it's his power that is purely behind this, rather than his looks. So maybe that aspect of him not, him being an older, out of shape man who looks at himself in the mirror and thinks, "Cool, bloody hell, I'm past it. Why would you want to?"
That's true.
Be
he does
with
say
me?
that, and that wouldn't work with Paul McGann, would it? Because Paul McGann's in great shape.
Yeah, I'm looking great. Yeah. So yeah, you want a bit of this? But so yeah, who knows?
That'd be our new Paul McGann quote.
That's
Paul, do you want a bit of this, McGann?
Do you want a bit of this? I had a lovely chat with him on Monday
so sad.
For about an hour talking about the Beatles, which was quite fun. That was an enthralling chat. About rock music and the Stones.
Oh, what this is?
I'm not going to be able to look at him now without thinking of him there.
Do you want a bit of this?
Do you want a bit of this?
Can you hear that? I don't know what they're doing next to me here. It's just this constant.
I can hear it now. Yeah.
Shut up! We're talking about Kenneth More and Paul McGann.
Darth Maul
McGann. Well, there we are. I want to give it 4.5 exclamation marks just because of that sort of casting thing, even though I think that Kenneth More or indeed Kenneth Williams or Darth Maul does a fantastic job, and I love that he's in it, and it's it's a curiosity piece to see him in a role like this. I've never seen him play a role like this in anything else, and I think he's amazing. But is wrong for the part. He's curiously wrong for the part, but because he's got such a absolute barrel load of patriotic charisma. You see, that's the other thing, seeing him as a man who's defeated, a man who's surrendered to the Nazis. You know, he never did that in any of his films, did he? He kept trying to escape even though he had no legs.
And a man that slowly realises he's been swept up in exactly their thing, which is to just sedate the country and just lull people into this very pleasant, sort of secure environment with them subtly pulling the strings. Yeah. And for him then to suddenly take a look outside the box and realise he is actually an instrument in that. And that his work is very much, without him even realising it, he thinks he's telling a true story and a story of this, but he realises that actually what he's doing is it doesn't matter.
He's bending it to their will, isn't he? He is compromising it. And this is the story of the awakening of him starting not to compromise. And then eventually, perhaps arguably like all converts, he goes totally extreme at the last moment, doesn't he?
Yeah, and
I remember when I first saw it, I didn't predict the end. Again, huge spoiler alert. She is meant to, the woman he's having an affair with is meant to deliver the code word. I'm getting masses of deja vu again. To deliver the code word to provoke the resistance to act and take over the country. And they've written it into the script that she sings a song. What is it? Britain's Awake or something like that?
Was it like Britain's Wake Up, Fight, or something? Unite.
Yeah, and they do it as a sort of song, and but he interrupts the broadcast live as himself and just says it. So he puts himself right in the firing line, quite literally, as the door of his office is splintered by gunfire. And that's the only action you get, isn't it? That's the only kapow action you get. You just hear people knocking at the door, and then they start blowing a hole in his door, and it's pretty certain they're going to blow a hole in him, but we don't see that. But the look on his face is, yeah. And
there's just chaos around him outside, gunfire and explosions and all sorts. But yes, I completely agree with you, Nick. I will give it 4.5 stars as well. I think you've
exclamation mark.
Exclamation mark.
Stars.
What am I doing?
So a half an exclamation mark is like, it doesn't have the dot at the bottom. It's just some half suspended
line.
There's like a third of a line up there. People will just think it's a printing error.
They'll think it looks like litres. 4.5 litres.
Or base 1 in number bases.
Oh my God!
Shut up. There's no such thing as base 1, is there? It's just binaries. Is that base 1?
You're asking the wrong guy.
All mathematical experts.
Who do I look like? I'm not Carol Vorderman.
You do look remarkably like her.
Well, thank you very much.
Nice legs.
Oh, thank you very much.
I can honestly say I've never seen your legs. Right.
No, well, I don't take them out with me.
I leave them in the cupboard. I don't want you to remedy that situation. Well, there we are.
Excellent.
We loved it. And I just have the sneaking suspicion I've said all this before in a podcast, but maybe I've just gone bonkers.
Who knows? But we've got to pick next time, haven't we?
Well, but should we just talk about An Englishman's Castle next time?
Yeah, why not? This is the Englishman's Castle podcast. Well, we basically touch on the same points every week, but just redress it. Welcome to issue 87. Today we're talking about Kenneth More's miscasting in An Englishman's Castle.
Got a few emails about it. The first one says, can you stop talking about this, please?
Second one says, can you return to the segment about the BBC bar? Certainly. Happily. Dear, oh dear.
Oh dear. Well, it's just time to tell you really that next week's Benji and Nick show will be a latest TV and emails one. So don't forget to email us at podcast@nicholasbriggs.com. But it won't be titled latest TV and emails because we will, by the time it's edited, we will know which TV programs we've talked about and they'll be in the title.
Very good explanation there, Nick.
Thanks, mate.
Very
By
thorough,
that
very thorough.
you mean tedious.
I liked it. I thought, you're thinking for the middleman.
What's that mean?
I don't know.
Oh, I don't know.
Just thinking they don't have to think. You are saying this is what happens. This is what we shall do.
I'm explaining. What are you having for lunch? I'm going to go off. Steph's buying me a sandwich.
I'll probably have my tuna and rice, probably, with a bit of lemon.
Your tuna and rice. You're not going to have someone else's.
No, I have mine. It's not Terry's. It's mine. Did I even say that? I don't think they advertise it anymore. But
they don't say that.
Certainly used to
we'll
be.
Just leave it there so that do people know it was Dawn French, wasn't it?
It was Dawn French. Yeah, it's not Terry's. It's mine.
Terry's chocolate oranges. I get one of those every year for Christmas from my mum.
So do I, and I love them. Love them.
And she always does this thing. What's my mum doing? Sending you Terry's chocolate eggs?
Oh well, she
oranges, chocolate oranges. They're not eggs.
Yeah, what is
Christmas.
she? She keeps sending me these chocolate eggs, and I keep saying I don't know what they are. I've never had them before.
At Christmas, you've got bananas.
No, you should see what she sends me at Easter.
It's just Terry. She
sends me just bits of Terry in little envelopes.
Is Terry the character from Minder?
Terry is the character from Minder, yes.
So Dennis Waterman turns up.
Dennis, hello there. Yeah, I've just come to mind you. They get a phone call from Arthur Daly. Now, I've got this great opportunity for you, Terry. All you have to do, quite simply, is phone up the papers and tell them that you've killed him. And they'll do a front page story and lots of money for us.
Is that actually a story from Minder?
No, there was the great one I watched recently of Minder, which is Terry.
You should leave this for next time.
So yes, I should.
There was a teaser for Minder there.
There's a great one I watched, which was
knock knock. Who's there? Death. So
on that bombshell.
Yes.
It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me. Pressing stop now. Ka-chunk.
The madness